So I'll make the start about what do we communicate with light, and it's a wide range when we talk about communicate, or the question what do we communicate with light, because communication with light is has got different grades of communication levels, I'd say. For example, the very basis kind of communication is the red semaphore. Yeah, the red light communicates stop. Green communicates you can go on. Or the next grade might be it's not. This is a convention. It's kind of law. Everyone knows red means stop. The next is the idea what we have by experience or by people telling us about this. This is the red light in a bar window next to the central station, so everyone knows. Okay, yeah, we know the services they offer there in this bar. So we can get deeper and deeper into deeper levels until we reach to a communication which is just intellectual invention about, or is the idea an architect has about his own architecture and his design, and that's what as lighting designers we're communicating. And I guess we'll see three very different points of views from different lighting designers doing very different jobs. I'll going to take the point of view of the classical architectural lighting. And so we started with a project. This is the entrance of a company which is providing technological machines for laser cutting. It's one of the world's famous companies for laser cutting machines. And of course, the architect used these machines to build this building, and every piece is laser cut on the machines by the company Trumpf. And his intention was to have this enormous roof and to give it a light appearance, as it was a cushion on flying. And our task as a lighting designer is to make this visible, this kind of intention to get a light roof, with transparent roof, unless in reality it's tons of steel inside, of course, but it should look light, high technology. And coming into this entrance, it's about the same, showing the material. It's laser cutting machines for steel, for inox steel, and so on, and aluminum. And this is the lighting design follows, in this case, the idea of the architect to show these kind of technologies used in this project to represent the company's main tasks. And all those reflections on the material, as you can see, and if you go deeper inside, are very important in the lighting design. So with this reflections, we can see, yeah, this is metal, this is cold, this is we even have got the impression we can touch it and know how it feels like just by seeing it. And this is what the color, what the light does on the material. So this is how we as lighting designers come to our design, looking at what the architect's intent was its design, and how we can emphasize this, or how we can approach to show the main intention of this. And of this, another example of it, there is not a real sign in it, so it's not. But yes, it's the border between land side and air side, and so we try to communicate what's the connection between airplane and building, and doing it by these stripes directing us in the direction of the landing bridge. And on the other hand, showing the intention of the client as well. Of course, it's a Turkish airport, and Turkey wants to present itself as a modern country, because, well, at the moment everyone has got much more the feeling they're going backwards, but they want to show, no, we are modern, we know about technologies, and we are a bright country. That's what light is able to transport, to show in architecture. Staying in Turkey, or not in Turkey, but in Turkish projects, is the embassy of Turkey in Berlin. They want to present themselves as an open, welcoming community. And so the architects were designing this copper entrance. But the copper would not have much effect without lighting. So we as lighting designers, we've got the task to communicate this, to show, to emphasize this entrance, to give it all those little glare effects and reflections on the copper surface, and to work on this, to show this as it is, or as it is intended to be. And with this, a mediante de la luz, Turkey, or the client shows, yes, welcome. You can enter our country. It's an open port, and we're open to the world. There are another different grades of communication with light as well. This is the sky bar of a 5-star hotel in Tiflis, and of course, the light is sophisticated and it's all well done, but there would miss something to show that it's a location of luxury if there wasn't this luminaire there, this glass, shining glass luminaire. So not only the light can be a tool to show what the architect wants to communicate, or the architecture wants to communicate, but the luminaire as well, of course. It's of course not that sophisticated as doing it just by light itself, but we as lighting designers, we are always on this edge between lighting and luminaire, of course, because lighting doesn't work without luminaire, and so mostly we try to hide the luminaire because the architecture is the important thing, or the light itself is the important thing, emphasizing the architecture. But somehow it might be adequate to show the luminaire as the tool to make the show. And this is the Deutsche Oper in Berlin, opera house of the 60s, and the intention of the architect in the 60s was, when he won the competition, to build a box, an empty box, a black box. Before, all the opera houses have been big opera houses with golden chandeliers and so on. And he said, no, the important thing is the opera. The opera itself, the music counts. And maybe the people inside count as well, the visitors, the spectators. And so he made this opera really rough, and if we come close, we see he had this concrete wall, which was anything but perfect. And no one had seen this before in this way until we started lighting it with a very sharp light from the side. So all these imperfections came out, and the structure of the facades, and you can see any single stone in the facade. And suddenly this facade starts to get attractive. Before, it was a very unattractive facade. But on the other hand, it shows a very rough cut between exterior and the inside of the box, where it's happening something. And so is the foyer inside. It's absolutely clean, clear 60s architecture. And when we made a lighting design, we followed the original concept of the architect hiding all the luminaires, which was not possible in the 60s in this way to have really spotted, accentuated light. But nowadays it is possible. So we more than 40 years, 50 years later, we could bring to birth the original idea of the architect, or to show what he has intended before. And this shows that an empty box, and people shall come out from the opera still totally, the architect called it pregnant from what they have experienced in the opera, and not to come into a bombastic hall with gold chandeliers, but to keep it in the heart and inside of themselves what they've seen before, and still with music inside, and it should keep experiencing it, or keep remembering it. And he said that the important are the people. And as you can see, the room before was quite boring, no much colors. The light was already there, but you can experience the light at the moment people enter the room. So there suddenly you can see colors on the clothes, and it starts shining, and somehow the importance of the room start to begin to be the people inside, not the room itself. And so this is what the architect wanted to communicate 50 years ago, what we now try to achieve to do with light. We can communicate, or we can show architecture more or less as it is. This is a project from Daniel Libeskind in Berlin, the extension of the Jewish Museum in Berlin. And this so-called sukkah was built for events. And of course we can show it as a sculpture just by switching the light, just using different light colors, switching the warm light off, switching the cold light on, using different directions of light. First maybe shining from up to down, now from down up, or similar. We are still lighting from up to down in this case, but the directions are a little bit different, and so suddenly the architecture switches from one image to a totally different image. This is what we can do with light, and what you can communicate with light in this case. So just showing, just as we see it during daylight, we can continue this kind of lighting during nighttime, of course, with similar light curves, similar light directions. But we can switch to a complete different scenario and make it a sculpture. And to communicate, yes, Daniel Libeskind is not just an architect, he's an artist. Another thing about communication with light, and here we come to a point, of course, the lighting designer only can be as good as the architect is, of course. So we illuminate the architecture, and if the architecture is bad, we can, there's not much to do. And in this case, this is a company, SoundCloud. SoundCloud, maybe some might know, is the kind of YouTube for musicians to share their musics, and they can upload their music, and others can download, or can stream this and hear this, and they can exchange musics. And SoundCloud has built a new office in Berlin for, I think there are about 150 people now at the moment. They will extend to 300 people within the next year, I guess. And normally, an office lighting is a very technical thing, and we have to follow a lot of norms about homogeneity, about lighting, lux levels, and so on. And they said, no, you can forget every lux level you want. You don't need to fulfill any homogeneity. You make the lighting design, and you are our consultant, and you tell us what you would do, and we'll follow. And so it was. And the intention of this architecture and of the lighting is to show, of course, we are different. We are not a typical office brand. We are thinking different. We are working different. We've got big open spaces, big kitchen where we can meet. We inserted this kind of sound wave on the ceiling. So this was our proposal for a ceiling architecture and for including these light lines, simulating the SoundCloud wave, the logo of SoundCloud itself as well. And the aim was not to have typical luminaires for the office. So these luminaires developed there are both luminaire and acoustic elements. So this material it's high absorbing acoustics, and so they got only the only absorbing element in the whole office are those luminaires. And so yes, it's really a working ambience from point of view of acoustics inside, and of course the light levels are bright enough to work, but it communicates. We're thinking different. We're thinking in totally different, I'd just say, yeah, tasks. Even the meeting rooms are different from typical meeting rooms. So yeah, of course, yeah, there's a name shown with light, but this I would not name this communication with light, but it communicates just a very simple downlight on the top of the table, and that's it. And this shows as well that they work in a quite low-tech ambient. It's, as you can see, the whole office is not a high-tech office. And of course, they communicate to the world that they are lazy and they've got some areas where they can relax, and there's much more areas to relax, which I don't show now in this lecture. It's much more, yeah. And this is what we can do with light as well, because yeah, there's a lot of daylight inside, but having this very focused light just on very selected pieces of wood, yeah, already creates this little atmosphere of a more or less cozy room. And this is very important for this company because they are competing worldwide for the best people to come there to work there. They're competing with Google and the others, and they all pay a lot, but they need some add-on. And of course, yeah, one of these add-on maybe can be, or light can help to provide one of these add-ons in an office ambience. Communication can even go deeper to this. 2 years ago, Orhan Pamuk opened his new Museum of Innocence in Istanbul. Orhan Pamuk, well known as Nobel Prize winner for literature, wrote this book, Museum of Innocence, with the history of a young high society guy in Istanbul, marrying a girl of same society, but he does not love her, and he loves a poor girl, and all the mess starting around. He loses this girl, and how he gets this back. It's a big, long history, and meanwhile, this guy is waiting for her to come back. he starts collecting little items which have to do with her, or which remind him to her, to a meeting, maybe when they were eating fish, or when they were eating grapes in some place, and he collects all this and in this history and in this story, and afterwards he asks Orhan to make a museum out of this, and this is the real museum of all those items which were displayed in the story, in the book. So the idea of this museum is people to come into this museum, and even if they did not read the book, they get an impression of the book. It's not telling the story of the book, because it's almost impossible, but getting the feeling of the book, display by display by display. And this a very untypical lighting task for lighting designer, of course. Here it was about discussions, hours, hundreds of hours of discussion with Orhan and the architects and others of the museum. What is important? Is the grape more important than the fish? Or is maybe the raki glass in front, at the right, you might see, important or not? And what do we emphasize? How can we create a mood which is only known in this story, but just in a picture, in a display of the museum? For us, it was incredible. It was our smallest project ever, I guess, because it's a really small museum. It took almost 5 years to complete. But up to now, it's one of my favorite projects ever, definitely, because it was so much into detail and so much into getting into the idea of it and displaying it with light. And of course, yeah, if we would switch off the light, the display would be dark, so there would be anything. And in museum lighting, in museum lighting is absolutely essential for everything you display there. So this is one of the images. So if some might know this this book, yeah, it's finally, if you go into this museum, you really get the impression of the Istanbul of the 50s, people drinking their raki and smoking their cigarettes, and you even have got the impression that you can smell what's happening in this story. Yeah, that's how I end with the raki glass, because I really think after all this, it's you deserved a good raki, or aguardiente. Ja.
Swap the computer?
Do you have it on the computer, or is it?
I'll put it on the.
Hmm?
Here,
On the disk.
Yeah.
Escape.
Or do I move the computer, or?
Here,
Just
maybe we just switch the places.
Yeah. Deck was my little.
Yeah, your notes.
In case.
Essentially, I did not.
I'm not
use
Bill
mine,
Gates,
as
you know. Oh. Up, voilà. 1 second. Voilà. Pluk. Merde, comment ça se passe? Ah oui, you can open it. I can open it here. I'm really good with, this PC thing. Hello. How do I see the UPC? Voilà, there you go. UPC. Normally it should be okay. So
I did it in exactly 15 minutes. So.
Okay, there you go. You are got a preview.
You can get my 5 minutes.
I'll go quicker. Well, hello everyone, I'm Philippe Stanfield. So I work at SNAAK, which is Snake. We've been producing Jann Dinneber's work for like 10 years, over 10 years. Now we still work with Jann Dinneber, we're still the same team, but we have this new name because we also want to tend towards more like general projects, general lighting projects like master plans and stuff like that, because Jann Dinneber is really an artist, and so we want to offer both services, I guess. So we're 6 in our studio. We're not a very big studio, but so communication. We're going to start with the definition. So it's to convey information about, make known in part. So finally, and who are we talking to? We're talking to a client here. So what do clients want? You know, this is like the whole, in this, you know, the whole world of, you know, consumerism and all that. How you want to make people, you know, how you want your image to be conveyed, you know, and all that. So finally, who are our clients? What do they want exactly? Why do they want to like add an extra column with extra money on their Excel sheet? You know, all these developers, you know, they don't see why they have to like pay, you know, I don't know, 200,000 more for their building, which is like already super expensive, which is probably like not even 1% of the whole building. A lot of them don't understand why they need a lighting designer or why they need, you know, a good lighting. So this is why I guess the whole communication thing comes in. Usually it's more for marketing purposes, you know, bigger buildings, bigger clients that have, you know, the money to convey it for marketing, or people that don't really have that many money, but they know that they need their building to have a certain image to kind of spread it out there. Well, it's not that cynical, I guess. There's also something more interesting about lighting. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Well, so so finally, lighting is, what is lighting? The essence of lighting. If we go back in time, I'm going to be a bit cheesy here, but you know, so it's you know, towards, you know, at the time, you know, it's just to see where we're going and, you know, not bump into things and all that. Then, like for example, in the 18th century, there was these. I love this image. It's like what they called moonlight towers. I don't know if any one of you know about this. It's in the 18th centuries and the 19th, they would do these really tall towers with this very, very, very strong gaslit element with these very big reflectors, and they would actually like light up the whole city, like this whole like block, a whole district with these lights. And so they're recreating the sun finally. And but that was a technology of the time, and it was pretty incredible. It wasn't very subtle, but at least you know, people could still do things during night, which is like against. So now today we have all these like different lights and all that, functional lights. Stores are lit, so it's like this big mass burbura, I think you say in Spanish, you know, of light everywhere. And so, you know, there's no sense, there's no orchestration of light, you know, it's all kind of there. So we're recreating the day light in a way now at night, and I think that we should go back to black. And actually, I don't know, is it possible that we kind of turn the lights down? Because I don't really care if people see me. I prefer they see the stuff. And since we're talking about how light is all about being dark, you know, it's about sculpting. Well, so I don't know. I said this a bit earlier, but you know, there's the dictatorship of the sun. The sun, it's here. It's this big blanket of just white, and nothing can hide from it. You know, it's from the shadow maybe. And so here we are at night, which is great. It's a great material actually, because. I took this image, for example, because it's a piece of art which is all black. But you can see in this piece of art all these different materials, all this different materiality, and it's all black. Okay, so now we have this black element, all these black materials all over the place, which can be revealed in so many, like billions of ways, because we have like probably like millions of different types of light. Millions or billions of different types of colors in these lights, different types of techniques of doing this, of making it work out, and shapes and all that. So maybe 7 years ago we would have called us sorcerers, lighting designers, because it was just so like what we're doing now is just so no one would have thought about it so many years ago. So here we are with the Eiffel Tower, which wasn't lit at the time, and so it just, okay, it was good. Night, night is night, and that's why also we exist, is to keep the night the way it is, also not to overlight things. But I'm not going to overlap in my conversation. So here we are trying to reveal. It's kind of like, we're creating a fourth dimension here, a new dimension. We want people to really get into communicate with their, since we're talking about communication, communicate with their inner selves. So like when you go to a gallery, for example, and when you see a piece of art, well, you actually have this sensible aspect of yourself. You're kind of getting your animal side is kind of going away. And your spirit is it's revealing your spirit. Your spirit, you're more connected to your spirit when you go and you see a piece of art. Well, this is where we try to come in a bigger way at night and try to light up buildings, light up streets for people, and put them more at night. It's a time where people are to rest a bit more, and even before they go to sleep and all that, it's interesting for them to rest and take a pause, and to connect more with with their own dimension and their own way of thinking and all that. So it's not revealing everything like, I showed you before with the functional lights up everywhere like that. But it's more, revealing little things, kind of letting the imagination of the people flow, kind of like, when you go to a museum. So here, just with the little simple light here, it's just one little LED, with the combination of a material, which is just this plastic thing, and you duplicate it into a garden, and you create, it's not even a functional light, it's more of like an artistic light, I guess. In this garden, it's in Paris, it's in the Musée de Quai, and so this is an old picture. Now there's a vegetation, and it kind of like goes with the vegetation. But this picture is a bit more sexy, I guess. And so here, if you take a lux meter, for example, and we're talking about functional light here, it's almost at 0 lux meter, and it's not. There's basically the lux meter doesn't really calculate the light here. So us as lighting designers, we're like, we can kind of like divert the functional light and just with these little like points here, create this new type of lighting and just make people wander around, and it's kind of like wonderland. Voilà, bon. And then you can see the Eiffel Tower, which is lit up now behind. This is the Opera of Lyon. So I wasn't there at the time, but I'm just going to talk about it, about communication. So this is Jann, actually, that did the Jean Nouvel. Also, and so he communicated how the opera lived. So during when they were practicing, the opera people, it would kind of breathe in, breathe out. When there was a real opera piece that was really going on, representation, it was really lit up full blast like it is now. And then when nothing was happening, it was very dim and asleep. So it's a very simple, very basic way, but it's it's a way to communicate things now, and different from banners. It's a kind of a signal, a new kind of signal. So communication still. Here we are at the entrance of Marseille. This is a museum of Mediterranean culture. So what better to represent the Mediterranean with blue? And actually, the architect and Jann, they're kind of good friends with Ricciotti. They laughed about the fact that there's this old saying in Marseille. There's kind of this how do you call it? Une histoire, this story of people in Marseille, they exaggerate a lot, and so there was this thing where apparently they had this enormous sardina, I don't know, like this little fish, which is little like this, which was so big that it blocked the entry of the port. So this building, basically, it's a representation of that fish, I guess, in a way, but in an abstract way, in concrete. So here we, just very simply, and as I said, we have millions of possibilities at night to create something new, instead of like just putting white light and recreating the sun. We use these appliances that you usually put in the ground, that are stuck into the ground. We modify them with the manufacturer. So this is where there's kind of this trinity, this Saint Trinity, I would say, where for a project to work out, you have to have the client, the manufacturer and the lighting designer, everyone has to kind of get along, because if not, it's not going to work very well. And so this is where things advance, where you actually do progress in technology and in ways of seeing things. Sorry, bloop. So if there's only like a manufacturer, or if there's only a client, or it's kind of, there's this balance. So you kind of lose this balance of everyone has their own specialty and all that. And I'm saying this because us lighting designers, I think we suffer a lot from always arriving after. Like, oh my gosh, the lighting on a building, it's not possible, there's a problem, or oh my gosh, my building's black, you can't see anything. And we're here, we're like firefighters, we're trying to like, turn off the fire here. And it's crazy, but so I hope that in the years to come, when I get older, it's going to be easier. Well, this is still the museum. The museum again in different ways. So we're playing with the concrete, with the shadows, and it's a double skin. And this is the exterior skin, and there's an inner glass skin, and so we put ourselves between. It's actually a very cheap project. Well, this is the Galerie Lafayette. We wanted to talking about lighting designers, for example. It's the 100th year of the cupola of this. It was the 100th year like 2-3 years ago. And so for the 100th year, they wanted to restore it completely. All these lights that you can see on the sides here. I don't know if you can see my little. Oh yeah, all the lights that you can see on the sides here. They were all historical, and it's amazing the work. It's a masterpiece what they did. Like I don't have the details. It's too bad, but it's just. But I don't know. Like for the last 60 years, they didn't use them at all. They used in the 70s or whatever. They put in all these like spotlights and all that. It was just disgusting and horrible. All this was not lit up. The cupola was black, and even these golden things here were kind of black because like full of dust and all that. So here we kind of revealed it more with gobos, I think in English, and we redid all these like historical little appliances here with the technologies of today, of the 21st century. Voila, and so every season has a different color to communicate the different moods, I guess. All this is commercial stuff, so well, but you have to play the game. Here's the Denver airport. This is something that we're almost done with, actually, almost done with. It's like an enormous construction site, so it's taking like forever. But I guess here, like in 6 months, 7 months, it's going to be done. So there was all these budget cutbacks. So, but we wanted to. What happened is they asked us to do the inside of an escalator, and we said no. It's more interesting for people that land to see stuff outside, because it's going to be something pretty impressive. And actually, it's kind of. I'm not going to show it too long because I see people taking pictures, but. I don't really want to communicate about that much. Voilà, but I'm not used to doing conferences, so voilà. This is the Baccalaureate Bridge in Bordeaux. So it's kind of like the Lyon opera thing. We wanted to communicate with the city about how the river works. It's not really a river, it's an estuary, it's a delta. So when the tide goes in, it's kind of a clear water, and when the tide goes out, then it's all the mud that comes in from the inland, and so we change the color of these pillars depending on the high tides and the low tides. And then also there's all the whole functional lighting thing. We wanted to highlight the road. Here's in Doha. In Doha, it's the Burj Doha, the Burj Qatar. So this is so as you can see around us, there's all these buildings with like flashy, and there's maybe one building which is pretty interesting lighting wise. What we wanted to do is we wanted to do something very unified and something very calm. We didn't want to do any like Las Vegas or Hong Kong or anything like that. We just wanted to give the nobility to the material, which was metal. It's a second skin, which is a metallic skin. It's a crazy building, and I don't think there's any building that expensive. That tower is just the guys to know what to do with his money, but it's good because at least you have this masterpiece which Jann Dinnebier did, and it's just fabulous. So we wanted to give the nobility to the material, so we just went from gold to silver. Voilà, and I guess here you go again with the communication. The guy wanted to show that he had money, so gold and silver, voilà. Sorry. Other pictures. There's a little story behind this. Maybe some of you wonder what happened, but there's if you see it, we didn't do the programmation of it because sometimes clients some people tell the clients that the lighting designers don't have to finish their work, that they don't have to pay the lighting designers till the end, and that the manufacturers themselves can do the programmation for the clients. And so that's what happened. The manufacturer actually kind of took over the project. And so if you see the programmation nowadays, it's not us. So it's not us at all. And which is kind of sad because we wanted to do something very, very calm, like a cloud that was kind of, you wouldn't even see the change between the gold and the silver. And now what they did is they do like that, like a Tetris kind of thing, which is, it has no sense for the architecture. It doesn't communicate that kind of roundness of the architecture. It's a pity, but whatever. That's my kind of mean moment of the conference. This is a Bangkok airport. People are really stressed out when they go to airports, so we took that into consideration. We wanted to bring the sea back in. The sea is very appeasing. Blue is very appeasing also. So we just put blue, and we had to work with the regulations and all that, but we managed, and that was pretty cool. They weren't that difficult, and we worked with these really big architects which knew how to kind of like convey this information to the clients. We're all communicating architecture, communicating the lines of the architecture, revealing them. This is an evident example of how, in a very simple way, we revealed the lines of this very this very daring architecture. We didn't want to be even more daring than the architecture itself, so we just accompanied it very, very lightly, very light gesture. It was functional, but it kind of gave a wave, I don't know, to the, well, here we are really into the artistic field. So this is really experimental here. So we're experimenting with, as I said, we're really experimenting with the material, with kind of like these crazy materials. We're experimenting with video projectors, with different types of LEDs and all that to create these boxes. We created these boxes. You enter these boxes and you can actually touch the material, go through. And there was this whole sound thing which would go with the light. So the further you would go, the less light you would have, the more sound was deep. So the more you were kind of like going into the nothing, into like a black hole. So that was kind of fun. Same thing, same kind of thing, working with materials and lights and drawings on top of that. And this is all very, this is not static, it all moves kind of like that. Lighting design, I guess, where you design little objects, crazy little objects, for that move with the wind, that are kind of biological, kind of like plants. Oh, so this is another thing. Communication is outbreak, going viral. So nowadays, at the time we had postcards and all that, blah blah blah. Nowadays we have Instagram and things like that. And so before talking about that, I skipped a step. We have there's a city called Saint-Nazaire in France, and it was a very dangerous area of the city, which was a port. It was an abandoned port because the Nazis took over it and all that, and so it was kind of like the shame of the city. And so what happened is that one day the mayor decided he didn't know what to do with it, and he took the bet to do this event, but more than an event, like not an ephemeral event, but something that would stay. So he called Jann up and he said, okay, let's do something cheap, but something that'll work. So light is a cheap way actually to create an event, much more cheap than creating a building or, but something that can stay also. And light also is something that can confederate with everyone. It's in communication, there's community, but this created actually a community around this. People would start talking about it to their friends or families and all that. They would go through it, they would walk through it, and this now, it used to be really dangerous, and now it's the most expensive neighborhood of the city. All this because of this starting spark. It's a spark that started the whole thing. So all the developers and all that, since it was an interest point and it was so big, they started doing things around it, and now it's just it was a success for the mayor. This is something that he wrote a book and he talked about it a lot. So light can be something that can really, I mean, if ever any one of you are lighting designers, it's something, it's really something that can help the client get more money and you know, have more value and all that. You know, these are, I'm trying to give you guys some arguments here. This is Marseille, same thing. It was kind of chaotic and all that. We wanted to kind of like give the space to the public. So we worked with the landscape architect, which is Michel Levigne and Norman Foster. Also, we did this little thing. Voilà, there's nothing to say about it that much. We just did these really high candelabras. They were like 26 meters high. In order to really like put less candelabras and spread the light out more, in order for the city to use this public space as much as they would want to, and not have all these candelabras that would bother that public space. And then we played with the blue, because you know, blue and yellow and all that is kind of pretty. And no, but also in another way, it's interesting to see that when you actually insert art or sensitivity with people, and as I said before, because people communicate in the city, they communicate more with themselves, and you give them a break, and you transport them into another world. And in districts like the one I showed to you before, where there was problems and prostitutes, and I don't have anything against prostitutes, but where there's all these like different difficulties and crime and all that, well, it appeases the people there. It really does, because they see that the city takes into consideration. And so they're more part of a community. So this is the whole communication thing here. Voilà, well, here you guys kind of know this thing here. So speaking of Instagram, postcards and all that, here you go. This is an example where this was, it's still everywhere. I was at the airport the other day, and there's all these like little like notebooks with it on it, and it's like, wow. And at night, and not during the day, and you know, because the colors are much more. This is where at night you communicate the colors even more, you reveal even more, you can play with it more. This is why light pollution and nighttime, you have to really think about these two, and try to conserve the night, conserve the darkness as much as we can, in order to orchestrate different things. You know, give some empty spaces sometimes, dark spaces, really bright, really like give some bright spaces sometimes. And what else? So here we are, a postcard, an old one. And now, so there's this thing that happened where they put this, it's everywhere, Instagram. So if you go to, there's like 2 pictures, and it's everywhere. So it's, I mean, this is where you go viral with light also. There's so many things. It's interesting. This is Sydney. It's in Sydney. It was a district that wasn't that good. They wanted to create a big park underneath, and so we did this like flying carpet of light over the park. They wanted to create an event. There you go. There's an event. Galerie Lafayette's communication again. This is outside of what you saw from the inside, the cupola before. So, well, it's a fake. It's kind of what we call a fake real shopping signal. Not really, you know, everyone can see it from far away. We don't. There's the name Galerie Lafayette on it, but we kind of create more of a. This is all year long. It started with a Christmas. There was a Christmas competition for lighting designers, and we wrote them a letter. We didn't draw anything. We just wrote them a letter saying, you know, we can do something for 6 years, and you don't have to take it off. And you know, why spend so much money every Christmas putting it on, putting it off, and all that. And so no answer for 2 years. Like they didn't even answer. And then 2 years after they called, it's like, okay, well, show us what you got. And so there you go, 5 years after. So here we are again with regulations and all that. Every time you try to do something kind of different and all that, you lose 3 years, and it's just, you know, fighting with the city, with the signals and all that. And I'm sorry, but the cities are against these signals, these kind of like lighting design signals. They're not against it, but they're really going to give you a difficult time. But when you see all these pharmacies and all these, with those big flashlights and all that, and they're everywhere, and it's just, I don't see why we can't, us as people who are more expert in this domain, you know, do things to make things go ahead and advance. I'm not very clear, but I guess you kind of understood my point. Voila, double lighting, direct, indirect. That's the whole story. Bon. Communicating still with different colors, and I'm going to stop, voila, because this is boring. Sorry. Voila, poof, poof, inner sense, tic tac tac. Voila, gathering people. And oh, this is really cool. This is in Copenhagen. I just read an article about this actually, and this is my last thing because I didn't want to finish with one of our projects. I wanted to finish with this other thing which was interesting. But it's in Copenhagen, and actually now they're using light to do the bicycle paths and all that, and now they're almost going to like take off the red lights in a way, and it's only going to be these like ground lights like that, which are going to kind of like do like this guiding system like that, saying if you can pass or not, connected with a GPS system in the car and all that. So this is another way of communicating light, as you said, with, you know, next to the train stations. Well, this is more for the traffic. Sorry. What up? Thank you very much. What up?
Amazing. Finish.
Oh.
Super anti-DOS.
Oh,
Oh yeah, no.
Okay, good evening. I promise to speak a bit slower than Philippe.
Sorry.
At the same time, but just less words. Okay, here's my take on this idea of a light. What does light communicate? It's a very dear subject to me personally, to our studio. We've been really scratching our heads about this for a couple of years now. And it kind of starts from this. It's this idea of light as an ambient communicator. I mean, natural light, sky around us, that's an ambient communicator. It's a good example of it. We're very intrinsically aware of what it means, the way it communicates with you, the way sunlight ripples on the water, the way shadows move in a forest, the way, what does grey sky mean? We all know. We don't need to look at it. It's not explicit communication. We're just aware of it immediately. Another good thing, another good example of what is an ambient communicator is another human. Right now, you're completely aware of the people behind you. You haven't necessarily even seen them, but you're aware that they're there. That's ambient communication. It's not explicit communication. In our work, what we try to do is that we try to introduce this power of ambient communication that's around us in the natural light, but with artificial means. And at its best, in my opinion, it creates this quite interesting tension. So we have this, in this case, a piece of glazed architecture. This was just a test that we did, where you walk in and you think, okay, I know this. This is sunlight coming through a glazing. It's been distorted by the glass and it's creating a rippling pattern. And in about 1 second or 1.5 seconds, you go, no, it's not. What is it? So there you have a tension. So the natural light has been interpreted. We're not even trying to mimic it. We're not trying to make it look real. We're just trying to find this sort of psychological stroke biological triggers inside a human that says to us, hey, that feels natural. And when it doesn't, it's a positive thing. So it can be positively unnatural. I like the idea of unnatural light. I'm an unnatural lighting designer. You know, why not? And once you have a tension, you have a talking point. Once you have a talking point, you have a reference. When you have a reference, you have a postcard. You talk about it to your friend in a restaurant, they'll go and check it out. And in fact, with light, when you manage to create that tension, you actually, with very simple means, can turn, Jesus Christ, I'm not touching it. I'm nowhere near. I might be spitting on it. It's possible. But anyway, so where was I? So when you have this talking board, a very dull architectural object, in this case a cheap staircase, can become this sort of reference, can become a memory. So here, light certainly is a communicator. It's communicating something in a new way. It's reinterpreting or even possibly repurposing something, an object. In this case, that staircase, the purpose of that staircase lighting is that it says the upstairs lounge is open. The upstairs lounge is called the Dragon Lounge, so 8 o'clock in the evening, the dragon wakes up and starts breathing golden lava down the stairs. Why not? So it's a communication device, it's a sign. There's also a talking point, a reference point, a memory. I like this postcard concept. That's all it's doing. This is 3D mapping technology. We did this 5 years ago when 3D mapping was still considered cool. Now we can't do it anymore. You know, we're in with the kids, try to be hipsters. That's why I'm growing a beard now. It's been taking a while now. Anyway, this is an interesting project for communication. This is a floating building. It's called Arbor Isle. It's a vision of a crazy Russian man who's passionate divers. His idea is that diving becomes spectator sport. So it's a floating cube of glass. We designed the facade to become a active daylight element. So a little bit taking a clue from Ned Kahn's artwork, so it reflects its surroundings in an intriguing, interesting way, creates shadow patterns. When the night falls, it becomes an underwater theater. So there's this massive cube which sucks the seawater in. During the day, you see the divers in there, they're playing games that could never be played before, and at night is an underwater theater with, you know, half-naked ladies and sirens and all that kind of stuff. And we also designed an underwater theater rig for salty water, which was a bit of a nightmare. So when the night falls, then outside, you're in your hotel in Benidorm, and you look out of your window, and 200 meters off the coast, you see this building floating there, and then it begins to communicate essentially this message that says, "Come here." Quite simply. So it becomes like this sort of mesmerizing miracle in the middle of the sea. And the way it's done is that we put a very simple, essentially a media facade system in. But what controls the lighting is an algorithm that models in real time, all the time, the behavior of the fish. So we're trying to link it back to this underwater world, but in a very abstracted way. I'm not a big believer in explicit communication. When it's explicit, meaning a video screen saying "come here" or a video screen showing a fish, I think we get bored with something like that very quickly because we're bombarded by explicit information in our lives. It's a big problem, actually. It's becoming a stress issue for people. A little bit more subtle example of something similar. This is a headquarter building for a company called UPM. UPM is a paper company in Finland, and we were asked to do, in this case, a light art intervention quite late in the project. So we have this atrium building, or atrium space. We put in essentially a plastic fin structure. So this is a screen-printed plastic fins with loads of LEDs hidden inside. The idea being is that this device brings the sense of natural light into this space. You don't get much direct sunlight in a vertical sense in Finland practically ever, only in July. So we wanted to create that constant sense of natural light, but in a very, very artificial means, very intentionally. The lighting color temperature of this device is 2,700 Kelvin. So it's warm white. Whatever colors you see on the screen is just to do with the white balance of the camera at the time. But what makes this very interesting for us is that it's in constant movement, the same way as natural light is in constant movement. There's no such a thing as static natural light. It cannot exist. When that moment happens, we will all die, because it means the planet has stopped rotating. So in this case, this light is in constant movement, and the way it's achieved is that there's essentially a 3D model of a forest. That forest is moving, and it's being moved by the real winds in Helsinki, and the light is shifting through the forest, coming to these fins. Why forest? Well, because it's UPM, it's a paper company. Everything they do come from a forest. It's a narrative. But also because it's a very collective experience. In a lot of our work, we actually always say that we don't want to invent anything new, that we want to tap into something very old. And it goes back to that sort of biological, psychological triggers that we all have inside us, is like what makes us react positively to something. And I think it's kind of old collective experiences. So in this case, walking in the forest, seeing dappling shadows and light, we all react quite positively to that. From that, we get to this idea of cyber-physical spaces. Cyber-physical space is the opposite of explicit communication. So again, this is a way to achieve ambient communication. There's a lot of researchers at the moment who strongly believe that right now, this kind of the zombie era that we are in now with our phones, you know, the zombie is not the movie thing. It's not the guy like this. It's us. It's us with our smartphones. We're like with zombies. We're like this. We walk, we bump into each other. This era is going to end. It's going to end quite soon. And the way it ends is that this information moves to our surroundings. So we begin to create cyber-physical spaces where essentially everything is built into our environment, and the environment helps us. So this is a very positive thing. It gives us what we need when we need it. So there would be a wall that acts in a certain way. If I look at it, the wall knows I'm looking at it, and it gives me more information about whatever it is that it is communicating. A good example of this is you walk into your room, into your house, and on the right-hand side, you see a blurry image of a forest moving, and that means that your husband is outside running. So if you want to talk to him, you look at the wall, and the wall goes, "Would you like to talk to John?" And you go, "Yep." And then you go, "Jesus, sorry, I'll do it like, you know, what is it? What is it? I'm running." Is it better for you if I don't spit into this thing? Probably. That's a good, I like it, because usually when I do my talks, people fall asleep. With this system, you can't fall asleep. Every 10 seconds, there's some explosion. Okay, so you understand the concept of cyber-physical space. So the information is receding. It's going away from our kind of smartphones into our surroundings. This was a kind of a, you know, mock-up almost of that sort of a philosophy. This was just a little a lighting stand that we did for Philippe, and our job was kind of to do a content for an existing product, sort of a illuminated fabric. But basically what it is that there's a chef, and the chef's concept for his food was called the air we breathe. This is in Copenhagen, very Scandinavian way of cooking. So we created with these panels the air around him. So this is the air we all breathe. It's in constant movement. It follows the Copenhagen winds, but it also follows the chef. And that makes it cyber-physical because he's in contact to his surroundings. So the light is constantly reacting to what he does. And when he's ready, the plate is ready, he lifts his hands up, claps them together, and the light explodes, and you know you can go and get your plate of sushi and it's ready. So it's a very kind of a simple way of approaching this, but you know, it's early days. Another example, this was done in Bilbao a couple of years ago as a sort of a temporary, again, a bit of a mock-up, really, from our perspective. It's kind of like a test of how we can create a mural of light that's, you know, forever interesting, forever beautiful, never repeats. How do we do that? Because we think very, very strongly that the reason that we can sit by the river and watch the surface of the river forever, the reason we like the clouds, the reason we like the fact that the natural light is in constant movement is because we don't perceive repetition. In artificial lighting, we very often perceive repetition and we get sick of it very quickly. So we try to achieve that here, and it's basically just to do with parameters. So if you take things like the wind, again here, as a parameter, the only reason we're using wind in this case is because it's random enough. So it creates enough triggers into a software that's constantly algorithmically calculating a new pattern in real time all the time. It cannot repeat because the wind doesn't repeat. And of course, anything else can be a trigger. If you figure out something that doesn't repeat, you put it in as a parameter, and hence your lighting stops repeating. Well, the other aspect of communication then is this idea of participatory light. This is very trendy now. We're becoming kind of more acutely aware of our kind of urban surroundings, the urban context. In a way, this is almost like becoming a bit more socialist, or social at least. I come from Finland, everything is socialist. It's not necessarily a swear word in that part of the world. So you have to understand me. So participatory means it's a little bit like the cyber-physical space, that you can actually affect your surroundings. And in this case, kind of like a media facade, really, but it's an art piece, truly. There's white lights behind ceramic panels, so during the day it's just white ceramic facade, and at night it wakes up. So most of the time it's very calm, flickering, beautiful pattern that does not repeat. It's tapping into this natural movement of light. But every now and then, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whatever, we allow people to get silly. So we're living through this stupid selfie generation moment now, where people used to take pictures like this, and then they took pictures like this, and now they take pictures like this. So suddenly it's me, me, me. There's this little Y generation that's going on now. So we let people to go into like a photo booth inside this hotel, and they can do a video selfie, 15-second video selfie, which is captured with 3D cameras, and you can be stupid. So you can be the girl in a conference, a little bit drunk, the hipster who's a bit stoned, the German, football hooligan, and I don't know what that blonde girl is doing. And that then gets put onto the facade, but not explicitly. So we abstract it, because again, it's not interesting if you just put somebody's face there, but rather it is suddenly interesting when you allow their movement to move the lights. And I don't know why that is, but it's more futuristic if you wave your hand and the lights move than if you wave your hand and you see yourself waving a hand. Although the technology for the latter is more complex than for the former. So we're doing this sort of thing. So we're doing almost real-time abstraction, again with coding. So you get turned into this blur of light, and then that gets scheduled. You can schedule it whenever you want, and it goes onto the facade, and you can say, hey, that's me, look, that's me, I'm doing it. But here's where it gets interesting. You can also integrate it with social media, because why do a selfie if you can't share it? Selfie is all about sharing. I mean, I don't take a selfie and then look at it myself. That's weird. And the selfie is weird anyway, but anyway, I don't take selfies, but anyway, you catch my drift here, yeah? So, you have the selfie generation, so there's the dude doing his thing. You then give a gift. So, the wall, the building says, hey, would you like your 15-second selfie as a gift? You say, yes, please. It sends you a gift, and then it allows you to share it. So it goes out with automated hashtag Eurobuilding, hashtag Madrid, hashtag dinglidong, hashtag I'm cool, whatever. And with hashtagging, as you know, you suddenly enter a whole sort of stream of communication in the world. You're like tapping into trends. So anybody who taps in Madrid will get this. Now, if we do it, let's say I do it, that's our Twitter account. So we have 408 followers. They're interested in lighting, so maybe 150 will click. So that's not exactly making us an international reference yet. But let's just say this guy goes there, does his thing. He's got, what does he say? 31.6 million followers. I come from Finland. There's 5 million people in Finland. If he goes there, if we can get him into this box, scan his silly face, get it onto this thing, and he shares it with automated hashtags, our client, his building, this location in Madrid, will become international reference overnight. Absolutely overnight. Because out of those 30 million people, 15 million are journalists. So this will go like wildfire. I mean, that's the whole viral thing. Keeping in mind that our client, only thing he asked was, could you light our facade? And by the way, you have 6 weeks. This was our response to, could you light our facade? we potentially have given him enormous marketing tool. If you know, there's ifs. Now, one of the ifs is like, can we get Cristiano Ronaldo into the box and, you know, whatever. But hey, this is 300 meters down the road from Bernabeu Stadium, yeah, where the other team plays, the other one. And he happens to have the only 3 Michelin-star restaurant in town. He has the best Japanese and he has the best bartenders. Real Madrid players actually do hang out there. They do go there. So it's not entirely impossible. I don't know if he's stupid enough to really do all this. But then if we can get him drunk enough, get him into the box, we go somewhere. And at least, you know, it's possible. Okay. So here you see more or less this in action. So it is abstracted. It is abstract movement of light. It's kind of wild movement of light. And then there comes a moment when you go, ah, yeah, no, that's me, that's me. Look, that's me. I might even realize it's you, but you know it. That's enough. Or it's your kid doing it. Yeah, that's my boy there, look at it. So it's you in the lights. It becomes this sort of a selfie thing. And if you then imagine they become, you know, it builds up a library. So after 2 years, there'll be 200,000 Madrileños boogieing away there every Friday, that kind of idea. So it becomes social and it becomes participatory. Now, light as an urban communicator, we saw in Philippe's presentation very much this sort of things, very similar principles, where basically the building begins to communicate. The building membrane is not anymore static. When the sun goes down, the architecture gets reinvented. It begins to have new roles. It begins to communicate. The question is always, what would it communicate? The obvious thing, like in the what we're doing here, is exactly the same as what Philippe and the guys did for the Lyon Opera House, is that it essentially communicates the inner feelings, the inner happenings of the building, what's going on. So in this case, a mega stadium, one of the 2022 Football Cup stadiums, and this is how it works. So in a normal evening, it's a white light flickering away. There's an architectural concept which is called Diamond in the Desert. So it's the diamond in the desert doing its thing. But when the show starts, i.e. the football match, let's get some, then it begins to communicate. It begins to go as crazy as the people do. So now, for example, the guys with the blue shirts are attacking from right to left, and so it's in real time, all the time, in an abstracted way, communicating what's going on inside. Now somebody got a red card, the entire Doha will certainly know that. And so it goes. So because no football match can possibly ever be the same, by default, this thing will end up looking different every single time there's a match. Okay, now somebody scored. Boogie, boogie, boogie. This is a very old concept video we're watching here, about 4 years old. So it's starting to look a bit cheesy, but you know, luckily we get to do the content in 3 years' time. So now Brazil is attacking, and there's the helicopter view, or the drone view, as we should call it nowadays. And then when the show stops, when the football show stops, it calms down again. So it's not, you know, it's not like eating too much ice cream. If it's going crazy every night, it's nothing. It loses all its narrative power. Now, how is it done? Everybody now thinks, no, it's following the sound and it's doing this and it's doing that. Well, kind of, but not. It's actually based on technology developed here in Barcelona by the guys from Reactable. Maybe you know this. It's an electronic instrument, very interesting, been around for a few years. And it's based on haptic computing. So it's a haptic computer interface that with blocks allows you to make music in real time. So we want to turn that into a lighting device. So no lighting show is predetermined. It's done like a VJ or a DJ. It's done at the moment in real time, every time. And in here, the wind, the parameter that makes sure that this thing does not repeat, is you. So it's human error, because you can't repeat yourself exactly twice. It means every time you do something, you will do it differently, and this way we'll make sure that it never repeats. And then I'll finish with this. I hope there was none of you here last year, because I'm talking now about the same things as last year. But you know, we don't have that many projects. Just on the topic of ambient communication, going back to the very beginning, to this idea of light in constant movement, light as an ambient communicator, and light that does not repeat. This was a project that we won from a competition, and the basic idea was to convert an oil silo, basically old rusty tank, into a permanent light art piece. And for us, this was as much a daylight design, daylight art piece activity as it was artificial light. So there are steel mirrors flickering in the sun, which then responds to the idea of water flickering, the light movement on the water. There is a very specific hole pattern that traces the arc of the sunlight in Helsinki in this particular location. So you get this absolutely beautiful shadow patterns moving inside, and you get this very direct connection with time. Because of course, in a lot of this work, as you can see, the key element is time, and time is a key element also in communication. This was a concept for the artificial lighting. So the artificial lighting was to respond to the winds. It was to be algorithmically modeling in real time the swarms of birds, so swarm intelligence. These are algorithms available since 1986, I think, from video game industry. And that means that every light has the same amount of artificial intelligence as a bird would. So in other words, we have not programmed the patterns, because birds do what birds do. So here's a software. In the software, there's 1,000 birds, and when the wind picks up in Helsinki, we throw in a hawk. So it's a predator, so the birds are like, oh shit, a hawk, and start flying around, and that's what creates a light pattern. If there's a storm, we throw in 4 hawks, and so it goes. So we never ever know what these things do. That's been translated into a lighting grid, so there's about 1,000 white LED lights. It's the same light that you see inside, that you see outside, so inside is indirect, reflecting from a dark red surface. Outside is you're looking directly into the white light. And this is roughly how it looks. Oh, let's get some music.
Öiset helminaat, minä sinulle ojensin, mutta minne sitten katosit, oi kauneimpani. Öiset helminaat, minä sinulle ojensin, mutta minne sitten katosit, oi kauneimpani. Ohitseni, pilvet kulkevat ohitseni, ohitseni, pilvet kulkevat ohitseni, ohitseni, pilvet kulkevat ohitseni, ohitseni. Pilvet kulkevat ohitseni.
That sort of thing. And it's been there now for 2 years, about, a little bit more, doing its thing. Birds flying every day, all the time, well, until 1 o'clock in the morning. So far, no shipwrecks, no complaints. Thank you very much. Gracias. ¿Preguntas? I switch it off. Can you?
Bueno, yo voy a haceros una. Te lo voy a hacer a ti, Philippe. Porque de hecho no lo has comentado, Tapio sí que ha entrado. What's your starting point
My starting point?
for the project?
That's a trick question. My starting point with the project, or our starting point with the project, since we're 6. I think I kind of said it. It's about how to reveal. And we're gonna take in. There's so many different starting project points. That's
I know,
problem.
but you have something going on all the projects that do.
Okay, so that thing, yeah, that thing would be how we would actually sculpt an existing piece that we give us, you know, like a building or a garden or whatever. You know, it's dark, and how we're gonna, with a crayon or with a charcoal or with something like that, how we're gonna actually, you know, use the architectonics of the building, and how we're gonna reveal this building in a poetic way. I think we have more of a poetic approach. You know, we're not very technological. We're more into the percept, I think, into like a primal percept, with very simple lead. I mean, we're not like Tapio, which is like very, you know, with all the programming, and I'm fascinated by it. I'm like, wow, like a kid, you know. But we're much more basic in a kind of like an artist, which would paint just with a brush, you know. I guess that's what we would. That's more our approach. Is it's more like just brushing just with a little like pastel or what else. That's I don't know if that answers your questions or not.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. What else?
More analog.
Oh yeah. You know, argentique. I don't know how to say argentique.
¿No hay ninguna pregunta? Sigue sin haber ninguna. Bueno, pues en tal caso, muchísimas gracias. Gracias también, obviamente, a la identidad porque estemos aquí, al Cosmo Casa. Y obviamente también a nuestros sponsors. Formamos parte, o esta conferencia forma parte del máster de Lighting Design de la UPC. Y obviamente a nuestros fantásticos ponentes. Gracias.
Gracias. Bah oui. Hein.